do you see?
It tells me to pause recording.
Okay, so we're recording. Awesome. All right. So let's see. We're a few technical difficulties here on our first blab, but that's okay. That's what happens. Welcome everyone to our first Tuesday in the Trenches show. What we're going to talk about tonight is how to help your kids survive the first week of football practice. So one of the things we're going to look to do in these shows each week. First off, my name is Steve Stark, and my co-host here is Glenn Derby. So we have Coach Steve and Coach Glenn. So we are the founders of Trench Training. We have a website called TrenchTraining.com where we work with and train linemen, offensive and defensive linemen. We do elite level training for starting at fifth grade all the way through high school. And we've been doing that since early this year, and it's gone real well. And now we're looking to keep creating content here and working. Oops, I think I
put that in there. Did that work?
I don't think it's gonna work.
It doesn't. No, it's not.
It doesn't work, and it just covered you up, so I can't see you. So I'm gonna get rid of it. All right. So we're gonna go on topics each week related to football, to sports in general, to life in general. And this week we're going to start with a series on surviving football practice, and I think this is a good topic since I know Coach just started your first week of practice today, right, Coach?
Yes, I did, and I think we're going to have to add in how to have coaches survive their first week of training camp as well.
Yeah, I know there are a lot of coaches that are probably feeling that today, especially here in the state of Wisconsin. I know that pretty much I think all the high schools started today, didn't they, Coach?
They did. Yesterday today was our first day, and the WIA started this, or not I think it's WIA started this new rule where you can have one long day and one short day. And our coach decided we were going to take full advantage of the long day. So I had a very long day today.
Yeah. Well, that's what training camp's all about. So that's why we're going to talk a little bit about what we can do to survive those long days and the training camps. And we're going to kind of have a series of this over the next few weeks. Today we're kind of just talking some general guidelines, then we'll get into some more specifics in upcoming weeks. But today we want to discuss. We did a post earlier this week. Late last week on surviving the first week of practice, and talked about 5 keys to surviving your first week of football practice. And I think it's important, especially for kids at various levels, but especially for kids that are starting a new level. I think that's always the most difficult time, where kids are, even going into college or going into the NFL. I mean, I know I felt it when I first went. You get those butterflies. You're not sure, how am I going to fit in? You don't know a lot of people yet. You're not familiar with your coaches. And even if you're familiar with them personally, you might not realize what they're like on the field. There's a lot of different things that are going on that first week of practice, especially when you're starting a new level. And at the youth, as youth football players, a lot of times they're going, level to level each year. Now it used to be like just lightweights and heavyweights. You have 3 years with one group and 2 years with another. And now it's basically broken up grade by grade. Isn't that what you're seeing, Coach, in most communities where they're doing grade by grade?
I am seeing grade to grade. The other thing that you're absolutely right, though, is some of the league that I worked with last year, they actually do a redraft every couple of years. So there gets to be a group of guys that are together for a year or two, and then all of a sudden they do a redraft. So now all of a sudden you're with a whole different group of kids than you were with before. So that you're absolutely right. The butterflies and getting nervous and not knowing who the coach might be and different players and working with different people can cause a lot of anxiety and bring on some fear for some of the kids that are kind of worried about, what's it going to be like. And
Yeah.
I think the anxiety that you're discussing can also add to physical issues if the kids don't take care of the 5 things that we're talking about. I think that's why one of the reasons that it makes it even more important to really pay attention to these 5 things that we're talking about.
Okay. All right. Well, let's jump into the 5. We're planning these sessions to be a half hour, and if we end up in discussion, we may go longer. But we're really going to try to stick to that 30-minute window. It's we're trying to do this at 9 p.m. Central so that we can maximize time. We're all, most of us are parents. Most of us have kids that are in youth programs or high school programs or whatever, or just that age. And this is about the only time we have that we're not, trying to miss things that our kids are doing. So we want to try and make sure we keep these pretty concise. So we'll try to stick to that 30 minutes. All right. So we're going to go these 5 keys. Let's first just run through them. The first one is stay hydrated. The second, number 2 is get rest. Number 3, wear comfortable clothes. Number 4, let the coaches coach. And number 5, don't let them quit. So we're going to dive into each one of these a little bit here. And first we'll start with the stay hydrated. Obviously this time of year, pretty much everywhere in the country right now, we're going through some heat spells. I know it's going to be really, really hot on Thursday here from what I hear. We had a pretty good one today. It wasn't terrible, but you could feel the humidity coming back. And hydration is such an important thing. I was looking at something, and I'd heard this before, but I was looking at a WebMD article about how much water to get. And one of the things that I've heard it for a lot of years, is you want to try and do about half your body weight in ounces of water. So if you think about drinking a half an ounce to an ounce of water for each pound you weigh, okay. So if I weighed 150 pounds, which I did in 5th grade,
4th grade,
yeah. Right. If you weighed 150 pounds, you'd be looking at 75 to 150 ounces per day. So 75 being the minimum. You want to do at least half of your body weight in ounces of water. Okay, if you're 150 pounds, you want to do at least 75 ounces of water. If you are in a hot climate, which we are now, and you're exercising, which obviously kids are, they're going to have equipment on, which adds a whole nother level of heat and keeping heat in and all that stuff. You want to be up towards that top number. So kids really want to be trying to drink whatever they weigh in pounds. They want to do that in ounces of water per day to stay hydrated. I've seen that guideline before. I just confirmed it with there's several articles, but there was a WebMD article that I read that was pretty good specifically about that. And what do you want to add to that, Coach?
Yeah, one of the things I'd like to add, there's a couple things. I think it's extremely important that you hydrate. Don't count those ounces of hydration during practice. I think those need to be outside of practice, and preferably like several hours before you get to practice. So in other words, if you've got a really early morning practice, then the evening you want to drink as many ounces as you can, because if it's hot and you're sweating a lot, the water that you're drinking during practice is pretty much going right through you. So I would suggest if you're doing the 150 ounces for a guy that weighs 150 pounds, try and get those 150 ounces in outside of practice, and then drink. We obviously, I know at our practice, and I know most coaches now are smart enough to know that they've got to water their kids all the time. And so at least 25 minutes to a half hour, we're watering the kids and encouraging them to drink as much water as we can. So I would say, to be safe and to give your body what it needs, you should have that water outside of practice.
Well, and I would say too, there are a lot of, most people don't do that. Exactly. Most people are not drinking that much water. And, one of the things I know we've done we did a camp just a few weeks ago. I went and visited with a youth program down in Illinois. Last week they were doing conditioning, And one of the things that did a really good job talking about hydration was don't wait until the first day you go to practice to drink 150 ounces of water, right? And it's your body's not going to be able to handle it. You got to build it up, and obviously we're a little behind the gun now if you're starting now, but you got to start if you haven't. Start now. But going into each season, you want to try and a couple weeks in advance start building that water up if you're not drinking that much, so that your body gets used to it. Because I think if you're sitting there drinking 150 ounces and you usually drink 15, you don't want to be throwing it all up at practice either, which is another, to your point, don't wait until right before the practice to drink. Be hydrating all day long from the time you get up until, maybe an hour before you go to practice. Try and get all that water in.
And obviously I weigh a little more than 150 pounds. So when I started to really learn about how important hydration is, I actually got a gallon pitcher. And so what I do is I fill up the gallon, I put it in the refrigerator, and then I monitor all day long. Did I drink that whole entire gallon? And I try to also not count, like if I stop at the the gas station and grab a bottle of water, I still try and get that gallon of water that's in my fridge down. And the other thing that I think is really, I personally used to not like to drink a ton of water. So I would say, all right, well, I'm going to drink Gatorade, or I'm going to drink this or that. I don't think those are the same. I think you really need to stick to water.
Yeah.
And that's the best thing for your body.
Yeah. And I don't think, I think, if you're trying to drink all those ounces in Gatorade, that sugar is going to get you
exactly
eventually too. So you want to be careful about throwing too much sugar into your body all day. And I know, it's not bad to have one of those.
You could throw some lemons in your water, or you can throw some cucumbers in there or something like that if you need some flavor. But I would highly recommend staying away from the sugar, the powdered stuff, the diet stuff to throw in there, or the, like you said, the Gatorade or the sugary stuff, because that's a whole different thing that you're going to be adding to your body that it doesn't need, especially in times like this.
Yeah, and no soda. Stay away from soda. You don't need that anyways, but you definitely don't want it, because that, anything with caffeine is going to get you come this time of year. So
caffeine, sugars, and also all that other chemicals that they throw in there.
Right, sure. And you want to eat well too. It's not really something that's listed here, but you can also, watermelons, oranges, fruit, you can get, those are great ways to get extra hydration, also to get, the right nutrients. And so you want to be eating well as well. And that's important all the time.
And one of the things that I've always learned, and I've done in the past, and I think it works really well, is prior to practice or games, you're going to eat complex carbohydrates. So potatoes, things like that. After practice, you want to eat as much protein as you can. So, don't eat a ton of protein before the game, eat it after, because your body's craving and needing protein after it's worked really hard. And before, you want that energy from the carbohydrates. So that's kind of a little bit of a way to try and, help your kids eat the right things ahead of time, and there's a lot of stuff out there on the internet that you can find, but I think that's what's worked best for me.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, on to number 2, get rest. All right. So again, we all know that, that sleep is important. I think people are starting to realize it's more and more important to productivity, to how you feel. And there are so many of us that don't get enough sleep. And I know that, especially adults. I've been there. Especially with your kids need more sleep. It's just the way it is. Again, I was looking at something from the Sleep Foundation, and school age kids, they recommend 9 to 11 hours of sleep every night, and they say, 8 to 10 would be acceptable, but really 9 to 11 is what they should be looking at getting. And,
if they're growing, they recommend over 11. I mean, there's nothing wrong with a kid sleeping for half the day, sleep until 10 or 11 if they can, when they're growing, because they need that.
Yeah, the big thing is don't let them stay up until 1 and then sleep till 11, because, that's another thing, getting rest. Your body needs to kind of to get on that clock where it's used to getting up in the morning, going to, having practice, because eventually you're going to have to add school into there.
Exactly.
And it's going to be tough to do if you're up until 1 o'clock at night and then, or 1 o'clock in the morning, and then going to practice and then doing that same thing over and over again.
And I think it's really important too that, right now most camps, I know we are, but I think a lot of camps, they start early in the morning. So we're starting at 7 o'clock. Now, in 2 weeks, we go into game week. So then what happens is we start having afternoon practices.
Right.
Keep your kids on schedule, because it's only a couple weeks after that then they have to start school. So you don't want your body jumping around to all these different schedules if you can help it. I think they're going to stay alert. Their mind's going to get right. Their bodies are going to get right. So start getting them used to, as soon as possible, going to sleep, early at night. I mean, I would say get them in bed by 9 or 9:30. I know it's hard for 16, 17, 18-year-old kids to want to go to bed that early, but to be honest, if they want to be a great football player, that's a good habit to get into, because when school comes, you got to add in all the homework and all the other stuff. And I think it's really important, as Steve said, to get that 9 to 11 hours of sleep.
Yeah, for sure. Rest is so important. And another thing to think about with that is, again, it's summer. Kids are wanting to be out and having fun. Mm-hmm. And I don't like to tell kids they shouldn't do things, but you got to be smart about what you're doing after practice too. If you're going from an 8-hour day at practice to then, going to a pool party for 5 hours and going nuts there and then going to bed, a lot of times too, you're going to have a tough time winding down and all those things. You got to be smart about what you're doing too. You don't want to, I'm not saying you need to be a slug and do nothing the rest of the day, but you also got to be smart about your body, and, one of the things that actually pool time can actually help you recover if you're relaxing in the pool, hanging out.
And I'd recommend even putting an umbrella up somehow in the pool so you're in the shade. Being in the sun like we were today for it was like 5 hours out in the sun. That's enough sun. And so getting in the pool is great. I agree. But I also think, you got to get in the shade and you got to give your body a break.
Yeah, for sure.
The pool's going to feel good, but, again, get out of the sun.
Well, and be smart. Limit your kids' time in what they're doing as far as pool time goes, or outdoor time, or, whatever it is. Just be smart about it and make sure they're not overdoing it. That's for sure.
Yeah. As our coach said, don't be out riding your bicycle or playing one-on-one basketball and things like that we all love to do. It's time to take care of your body these next 2 weeks, especially 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, for sure. All right, number 3, wear comfortable clothes. Now, one of the big things that I wanted to bring out with this is shoes, because for me, breaking in my shoes was a huge thing every year, because I used to get just giant blisters when I didn't properly wear my shoes. And a lot of times, I know in college, we didn't get our shoes until like right before we went to camp. And then I think they started giving them to us a little earlier so that we could break them in for our workouts and stuff. Now, I saw a lot of kids this summer in our training sessions. Those kids were already wearing their shoes, which is awesome, because it's just, they can just carry that right into football season, and they're not going to have any problems with blisters and sore feet and that kind of thing. You're going to be sore no matter what, but man, blisters and difficult time with your feet is really, really tough when you're playing football. And I've certainly been through those seasons where you start off with those blisters and they don't go away for, a month. It's just, it's awful. It's terrible. And you definitely want to break those shoes in. The other thing is just making sure your kids have, the right kind of clothes, and make sure, and I'm not saying, again, it doesn't have to be Under Armour, it doesn't have to be Nike, but make sure they've got athletic, comfortable stuff to wear, especially, under their pads when they start putting that stuff on. You don't want to show up in, jean shorts to the practices where you're not wearing pads. Your kids they're going to be miserable out there, and you certainly don't want that. Again, you don't have to break the bank for that stuff, but you definitely want them to be comfortable.
And we had a couple, we actually had quite a few kids today that were getting a lot of chafing and a lot of, having issues with that. And there's a lot of lotions and creams you can get kids to wear and get the right kind of. And here's the thing. I've found it works very well is using vinegar in the laundry. Try and get some of that smell out of their clothes too, because boy, they can be some stinky ones. And I think that does also, not only is it annoying to be around as a coach, but it's also, if they don't have clean stuff and they're wearing it, they're going to get boils and blisters and things like that in their crotch area and in their feet. And, it is so vitally important to take care of the whole entire body with the right kind of clothing. Get those. I know they're expensive and I think they're worth it, but get the better socks. Buy the socks that really have some good cushioning and have some good wicking ability to get the sweat out of the feet and out of there. So you don't get the athlete's foot, you don't get the chafing, you don't get a lot of that stuff. And as tough as it is to get teenage boys to wear the right stuff, I think it's important if you can tell them, this is really important to you for your playing ability so that you're comfortable and you don't have to be worrying about a stupid little itch or this or that, because you got enough to worry about when you're playing football.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the other notes I made was, don't let your kids over accessorize. All right. Because we've seen it where they have, the armbands and wristbands and headbands, and they've got, 5 pairs of gloves, and, a lot of that stuff is really unnecessary. So very little of it do you need to play football. Right. I did like wearing gloves, but really not until I got to college. And you really don't have to have that stuff. So just be careful about the over accessorizing, because that gets a little crazy too. All right. Okay. So number 4, let the coaches coach. All right. And, I think especially at the youth level, we all, and I've been guilty of this too, where I watch my 13-year-old daughter play, and I think, man, I just want to tell her to do this and yell that from the stands. And, I think we wrote an article a while back about, not coaching your kids from the bleachers. And for one, your kids don't like it. You know what I mean? They don't want to hear you yelling about what they're not doing or what they should be doing when they've got a coach right next to them trying to coach them up on what they're doing. So, let the coaches do the coaching. If you want to be involved, I guarantee you your youth program will find a way to get you involved, whether it be coaching or volunteering or, whatever. There's a way that you can get involved. If you want to, do it. All right. But if you're not willing to put in the time as a coach or a volunteer, because all those guys out there in the youth programs, there are very few paid coaches, very, very few. They're almost all volunteers. So if you're not willing to put forth that effort, be careful about what you're yelling at your kids and at those coaches, especially when you're not willing to put forth, the effort, or you're not able to put forth the effort to be a coach yourself. So I would say make sure you let your coaches coach. If you've got a problem, obviously go talk to the coach. Don't talk to other parents about it. Talk to the coach and let them know what you're feeling. If you've got an issue, if your child has an issue, go talk to the coach. All right. But when they're on the field, let them coach. What do you think about that, Coach?
Well, I think the number one thing is that, find out how important it is. And there's a lot of pro coaching articles out there, pro this and pro that, as far as what the right things to say are. And it really is important to just really express how proud you are of your son or daughter, and really emphasizing that, they're doing something that's incredibly difficult. It's, as much as I want to say, I did it when I was younger, and telling my daughters, hey, you can suck it up and do it too. They don't have the same mentality as an adult does. So they really need that positive reinforcement. And the biggest thing is, there's a saying out there that says, we don't get to choose our parents. We don't get to choose our family. We can choose our friends. Well, it's kind of the same thing as you don't really get to choose your coaches. And And unfortunately, there are times, and I've had it in my life, a number of times where I can tell you some coaches that I absolutely disagreed with. There have been some seasons that I wish I could take back now that I'm older and more mature and would have handled it differently. You know, we don't get to choose our coaches. So what we want to do is make the most out of what we have. And the best way to do that is by really emphasizing the positive, emphasizing how much you love your kid, how much you love watching them play. You don't need to say more than that. I loved watching you play. And when you did that play, wow, that was awesome. So then the kid hears you're actually watching what they're doing instead of just sitting over on the sidelines worrying about whether they're winning or losing. You know, and as Steve said, trust me, I'm a parent. I watch my daughters, and there's times when I cringe when I see what the coach said to them or how they handled them. I got to just keep it to myself. You know, after the game, I don't go and tell my daughter what a crappy job the coach did, or, you know, he shouldn't have said that to you. All I say is, you know what, you got to make the most of it. We have and Steve brought this up, I think in one of his articles, that he said, we only have a limited number of plays in our lifetime. So make the most out of every play you have. So if you're a 5th grader, 6th grader, 7th grader, 8th grader, you know, and all the way on up, you only have a limited number of plays that you can play. So really emphasize how great and how, you know, all right, so you screwed up on that play. Don't worry about that one. Let's worry about the next one. You know, if the coach made a bad call and everyone in the stands said, man, what a horrible call that was, that coach has to deal with it. But you know what you can do is you can tell your son or daughter, wow, did you really play well? Did you handle that well? You know, you came back after that fumble or this or that, and man, look at what you did. So emphasize the positive. It is extremely frustrating, and I highly recommend that you find like-minded people, because when you're in the stands, and I've found even in all the staffs that I've worked with, there's a few coaches that are just negative. They're constantly talking about other coaches and how bad they are, or how bad the player is, or what a piece of junk that guy is, and this, you know, and it's easy. Anybody can join in that conversation. What's hard, and what I would recommend you doing is when you hear those conversations, throw positive stuff in there. Hey, yeah, you know what? That might have happened that way, but man, did you see what they did over here? And get some parents together to start cheering positively like that, and make that contagious as opposed to the negative. Because in today's day and age, with all the media, social media, you know, all the armchair quarterbacks, everyone out there that can go and dissect plays, and, you know, huddles out there, and parents can watch huddle, and, you know, we can critique and criticize coaches all we want, but what good is it doing your kid? It really is not helping them to be a better player. And that's what I really want to emphasize to parents, myself included, is help the kids get better. And you can't do it with negative, critiquing and criticizing and downplaying and belittling people. You know, build them up.
Yeah, and one of the things that I always think about too, whenever I watch a coach, and my kids are either being coached or they're with me when I'm watching a coach, is my kids are going to take their cues from me and how they treat a coach, and how, if they have respect. So if I'm a parent and my kid gets in the car and I'm just slamming the coach about what a horrible job they did, do you think that your 8-year-old or 10-year-old or 13-year-old or 18-year-old is going to respect that coach? They take their cues from you as a parent. Exactly. They do. They're going to follow what you do. So if you're acting the right way, you know, you're going to teach them, lead by example with your children, obviously. And that's one way to do it, is show respect for the coaches, so your kids feel that way too. So,
exactly. Yep.
Okay. All right. Number 5, let's move on. Don't let them quit. You know, I think that, you know, we're in that part of the year right now that it's the most exciting, but it's also the most difficult part of football and the training camp. You don't have a game for a while. You're practicing, you're conditioning. You've got a lot of times 2-a-days or long 7-hour days for high school kids, 7-8 hour days, where it's, film and practice and conditioning and film and all that stuff. This is the time when kids want to quit. And most times they want to quit because it's too hard. And I know there are reasons why, I know there are good reasons why people quit something. Okay. There are reasons, whether it be health related or family related or whatever it might be. But the one thing that, I know I preach it to my kids. My daughter, the first year that she went and did competitive swimming, she begged and begged and begged. I want to swim, Dad. I want to swim. I want to do competitive swimming. And they practice 4 days a week. Oh, I can handle it. It's going to be really hard. No, don't worry about it. I can do it. And we were there for 3 days. And she's like, I can't do it. It's too hard. It's too hard. And I'm like, no, it's not too hard. Nothing is too hard. It's what are you willing to put forth? Are you willing to do it? And the too hard is what you have to get through. No matter what you do, there's always going to be something that you think is too hard. But that's why you have coaches. That's why your friends are there. That's why your parents have to pick you up and tell you, you can do it. You can do it. And that positive reinforcement is going to help. But you can't let your kids quit on day one of pads because it's too hard. That's the thing you got to get away from. And again, football is not for everybody. Basketball is not for everybody. Baseball is not for everybody. There are a lot of things that aren't for everybody, right? Nothing is. But you have to be willing to put, if you decide to do something, for my kids, my daughter, I told her, listen, you don't ever have to do it again, but you got to finish. You got to finish this, whatever this session is that you're doing, you got to finish. Too hard is not a good enough excuse. If it were something else, a medical problem or, I know there are reasons, but too hard is not the excuse to quit something. And that's my opinion, but.
Yes. And I agree with that opinion a lot too. I think the other thing that's important to realize, and this is true for all sports, but I think it's especially true for football, is your son or daughter is attempting to, in my opinion, and I've played a lot of different sports, my opinion, the most difficult thing for anybody to go through is probably Navy SEAL training, some of the military boot camps, but right up there is football camp. It is the most challenging, difficult thing. And I can run a ton. I did a ton of line drills back and forth in basketball, and I did track, and I did all those sports where you do a ton of running, but it's not even close to as difficult as a training camp is. So understand that your son or daughter is really going through something that is incredibly challenging to the mind. And it's not, it is as physical as the body, but it's more in the mind. And so, Steve wrote an article on it, and I had the exact same experience. And in my freshman year at Madison, my parents came up to visit me. I think it was in the second week. They brought some food and some different things for us. And I was in tears. I'm like, I want to quit. This is so unbelievably difficult. I'm so feeling like a piece of crap. I'm feeling terrible about myself. I'm like, I'm never going to play here. They're kicking the, what out of me and da-da-da. And they said, you can quit and you can leave right now. But, once you walk away, you're done. You're never going to get another chance. And I'm like, well, all right, I'll give it another few days. And if you can just get them to do a few more days. Today, I was taking my daughters to their voice lessons after our long day of practice. And my youngest had a headache. And she's like, Dad, I don't want to sing. And I'm like, we're just going to go. And when we get there, you can talk to the instructor. And if your head's that bad, you can, I'll say, yeah, you don't have to go. And your sister can do it. And I got there, she started doing it. She went through the whole entire thing. She had fun at it and she felt better afterwards. We as parents have to really focus on helping our kids understand and get their mind through some very difficult things. And if you just encourage them to, as Steve said, encourage them to do a few more days, I always will tell them, you're not going to quit something that you started, But again, if it gets to the point where it's so miserable and they, you can really tell it's going to be a really negative effect on them after they've tried it for a long period of time, then maybe it's not the sport for them. I mean, I don't really want kids playing football that don't want to be there, because there's a good chance they're going to get hurt. So, I do agree with, and I would definitely have my kids, if I had a son that played football or even a daughter that played football, I would encourage them to continue, and I would try not to let them quit, because I think quitting is something that can become habit forming or contagious. Once you quit one thing, you're going to quit the next thing and next thing. And every time something gets hard, you quit. And the nice thing about football is you get through these training camps and the season comes, man, then it's a ton of fun. And, when you get through the season and then you start looking forward to next year, it's much more fun to work out, because you're preparing and getting ready for next year. So just encourage them and try and talk to them about, hey, listen, our mind has a way of telling it that it's too hard. And we have to tell our mind that it's not right, that it's telling us lies because it's not too hard. Thousands of football players make it through training camp every year, and they do just fine. And probably most of those thousands at one point wanted to quit, So it's the reality. I think it's a very important thing to take into account, is that, kids want to quit. We all, human nature, we want to quit things that are too hard. And we want to say, you know what, I'm not going to do it. But we have to train our brains, and it'll help us as we get older and get into the real world, so that we don't quit other things.
Yeah. Well, and as a parent, it's tough. It's tough to watch your kids struggle at something. It's tough to see them unhappy. But again, and I would say this too, once again, usually it's when the pads come on, that people really start to have an issue, right? I mean, it's when the pads hit, when it becomes it's real now. We're hitting,
Absolutely.
We're running around in pads, we're doing conditioning in pads, we're doing those things. And that's when it becomes really difficult. You got to, get through that first week of pads, and things change. Your body starts to acclimate to being out there, wearing the gear, the exercises, the conditioning, the hitting, all that stuff. A week to 2 weeks in, your body acclimates to it, and then your season's much different going forward. So I think it's that first week in pads that really gets a lot of kids.
Well, I think too, the soreness. Your kids are going to feel a lot of sore. I mean, they're going to be sore all over in places that they didn't even realize they could be sore. And so help encourage them that the soreness will go away, and really help them to understand that this is a process, and it's a process that's going to take some time. So just keep pushing through it, and you'll be all right. And we do a lot of preaching, and I'm sure we'll talk more on something where there's a difference between being injured and being sore.
Yep. Well, that's a good lead-in, Coach, because that's our topic next week.
Awesome.
We're going to talk next week about soreness versus injury, some of the things that that we can do for prevention, for treatment, some home remedies, that kind of stuff. We're going to talk about soreness versus injury, with the signs to look for, specifically to football, but they really carry over to pretty much any sport. But we're going to talk about some of those things. We'll have some research. We're going to do a post on that this week, and then we'll build on that for our next week's Tuesday in the Trenches. So,
Yep.
All right. Thanks, Coach. I think we're going to wrap this
Yep.
up right now. Thanks for joining us today and Tuesday in the Trenches. Again, be sure to get over to trenchtraining.com, and I'm going to just show the website here. I'm going to share it so you can see what it looks like there. Coach, you can see that okay?
Yes, I see it fine.
All right. So that's our Tuesday. That's our trenchtraining.com website. We have a free membership. You can see right here some of the things that you get with the free trenchtraining.com membership are the Parent's Guide to Recruiting, the starter workout for youth sports, the football one-on-one, that's learning the basics. That's kind of a guide to a beginner in football. Parents included, if you don't know the positions, about how you score, those things, that's all in that football one-on-one. You also get an invitation to our private Facebook group. So these are things that come with that membership. It's absolutely free. You'll also get on our mailing list so you can stay up to date on all the things we're doing at Trench Training. All our current training sessions. We'll do private lives, Facebook lives in that Facebook group, and then all of the posts and content that we have on the website, as well as our links to the Tuesday in the Trenches show here on Blab. So, all right, thanks, Coach.
Yeah, one last thing. It's just, guys, that really helps us a lot when you share and when you like and when you tell other people about what we're doing. So please feel free to share any of this, talk about it with others. Tell them about our Tuesday nights at 9:00 that we're going to be doing this on a weekly basis. And let's just get as many people out there helping our youth and the football players become positive members of society by playing this great game.
Yeah, and make sure you comment, guys. We really want to see some comments on the posts. And we get a lot of comments from, I know Coach does, I do too, people that will say something on Facebook or they'll comment in private text messages. When you read those posts, we'd appreciate comments on the posts.
And you can ask questions too.
Yeah,
ask us questions, yes.
We're going to be, obviously we've got content lined up over the next several weeks for our Tuesday in the Trenches, for our website, but we're also always looking for questions and things that you are looking for as far as information and content that you'd like to see. Those are things that we have access to people that can help us answer those questions. Coach and I have access to a lot of college coaches, many high school and youth football programs. So if you have questions, if you have things that you want us to see on Trench Training or in our shows, we'd love to hear from you. So make sure you get on that website, comment, and get that free membership. So there's some content that I think you'll like, and we'll be adding to that all the time. Every month.
And we're going to have some guest speakers here too, so that'll be cool.
We will. I think we're going to have some really cool ones, and not just football. We're going to have great coaches no matter what sport they're in. So we'll have some really good people on. All right, Coach. Let's wrap it up. We'll see you next Tuesday in the trenches. Make sure you play
big.
Yeah, play big.
We'll
see.
All right. Yeah.